Good to see you all here. Most of you guys have been seen a couple of days since we started. So this is the end of the marathon. So we made it 2 weeks almost of content. But this is the last open event. And we saved some of the best for last. I'm kidding, but it's a great honor and a pleasure to have Seshu with us here. So we've been hearing a lot about different topics related to the startup journey. So product development, UX, UI, developing for emerging countries, marketing strategies, user acquisition, many different things. But one topic that we thought might be of interest for you guys, which is certainly something that we find valuable to understand, is how big companies like Google actually think about M&A, acquisitions, and interactions with startups that are creating innovation. So we had the pleasure to have Seshu, who is a part of the Corp Dev team, which is like a cousin team from our team of Google for Entrepreneurs. And he's been here for this entire 2 weeks, talking to many startups, asking a lot of tough questions regarding what is your vision, what is your mindset for making the company grow, what is your vision for eventually exiting the company. He's been talking also to some VCs to understand what is the landscape of venture capital funding for the different stages at the ecosystem. But it would be really cool if he could share some with us too of how Google thinks about acquisitions and mergers. So with no further ado, Seshu, please join us on stage, and you guys enjoy this last panel, okay?
So I was going to do this whole presentation in Brazilian, but Andreas told me to do it in English. I'm just kidding, I don't know any Brazilian. So let me quickly introduce myself, and then I'll jump into the content. I have content for about, I would say, 45 minutes or so. I'm still debating on whether we should do questions in the middle or towards the end. I'm leaning towards doing the Q&A towards the end. I'm going to stay here as long as it takes. My next meeting is at 9 p.m., so a lot of time after this. So as you can see, my name is Seshu. I'm a principal in the Corp Development group. I'll explain what Corp Dev does in a minute. I've been with Google for about 10 years, 5 of those doing short-term international assignments, a couple of years in Switzerland, a couple of years in Singapore, India. Came back 5 years ago to join the M&A team. So far, I probably have worked on about 30 to 40 successful acquisitions. We look at a lot of deals, but I'm counting the ones that we completed. In terms of my areas that I actively work on, we have this. We had this huge initiative, Access. We still do at a much more smaller scale to provide internet access. I worked on a lot of deals, satellites, drones, so on and so forth. I also work on imagery deals, the satellite imagery for our maps, panoramic imagery, so on and so forth. The last area that I work on is NBU, the next billion users. It's the new name for emerging markets, I guess. So with that, let me jump into the content. So I don't have a lot of topics. This presentation is not about investments. It's about M&A. But I get a lot of questions on investments, so I thought I'll get that out of my way. I'll spend maybe 5 minutes talking about how Google invests money, who invests Google's money, why do they do it, just 2 or 3 slides. And then I'll talk about brief history of our acquisitions. So we've been almost 19-year-old company, so we've done a lot of acquisitions. I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about acquisitions in general and why we do it and what we really acquire. Most of the times, they're both the same, but one is much easier to explain. The other requires some legalese. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on what we acquire, but I'll touch upon that. And then I'll take you through a life of a deal, which is probably relevant to some of you that are looking to be acquired or whatnot. What happens from beginning to end on a deal. And then I'll leave you with some things to remember from my experience. Okay? Let's jump into, this is an intro slide that I put as in, to set up the investment slide. So, some of you probably know that our company reorganized last year into more like a portfolio company called Alphabet. And while Google is one of the Alphabet companies, we have many others. we have Verily, we have Sidewalk Labs, we have Calico, we have Waymo. I don't know if you know all of those. The Verily is our health sciences group. Calico is our life extension. Their goal is to extend human life by 30 to 40 years. Waymo is our autonomous driving cars. Sidewalk Labs is our digital city initiative. And we have others coming, so we haven't formalized them yet. So let's talk about investments. There are three different groups that invest Google's money. Right? There is the corp dev group on the left that I'm part of. And then there are two other Alphabet companies, not Google companies. That's why I talked about the first slide. Those are GV, that's our venture arm, and capital G. That's our kind of tier, the Series B and beyond investing arm. What we do when we do investments on the corp dev side, on the left side, we do strategic investments. We kind of put investments in areas that are relevant to what we do. Whereas if you take the GV and the capital G investments, those are purely for financial returns, right? So those are people that get paid on how those investments perform. So they have full autonomy on where they invest their money. We don't. On the corp dev side, we usually are very tactical. Somebody like Larry Page tells us that, oh, go put $1 billion in SpaceX. We just do the work. So we're not very financially driven, or we don't initiate those things usually. So what kind of investments do we look for? I mean, I touched on this briefly. So the Google Corp Dev, so this is only an investment slide. If you look at the prior slide, there is a blue acquisition side that I've left, which is going to be the thrust of the presentation. Let's get through this investments one. We're stage agnostic, right? We may invest in a company like SpaceX that's like very well funded, or we may invest in a company like Magic Leap even before anybody got in. GV does mostly early stage investments. They're our venture arm. In addition to providing investments, they also provide talent. So we have people with titles entrepreneur in residence. GV usually lends them to those portfolio companies. They go work as a COO for a brief period to help them succeed. They're very early, seed stage, sometimes through Series B. They're financially driven. We invest in those regardless of Alphabet's strategy. For example, GV invested in Nest way before we wanted to get into Internet of Things. And when we bought it, GV made a lot of money, right? And there is a pretty clear firewall between these groups to avoid conflict of interest. So the point is that they're financial investments. Capital G does a little bit later stage. So as you can guess, the diligence will be less. So if somebody already invested in these, you know that somebody vetted these through, so your diligence tend to be lighter. Those are later stage investments, Series B and beyond. Again, financially driven. Again, it doesn't matter whether they're related to Alphabet's existing products or not. I gave some examples of where we invested. Let's go on to the kind of investments we do. This is entirely corp dev related. I provide a lot more investments here. Sometimes we do it to get an access, right? Get an access to your technology. Maybe the company is not willing to sell. Maybe we don't want to buy them. Maybe we just want to invest in something that makes our products, that gives us better access to our technology and products. Again, innovation. Calico is like I said, is a life extension project. Those tend to have long lead times. And the CEO that runs Calico was the ex-board of chairman for Apple. SpaceX, we didn't want to lose this whole space initiatives and the internet access through space, so we invested $1 billion in SpaceX. We got a certain percentage of share. I think it's public information. We got a board seat. So you can go all the way to the right? I mean, we do reposition things. If you go to the right, Pokemon Go. It was developed inside Google. Niantic Labs. The CEO of Niantic Labs was the CTO of a company called Keyhole that we acquired that became Google Maps. After 10 years, he wanted to do something else, and how many of you played like Ingress or whatever is the dog food version? I see 1, 2. Yeah, so Ingress was the Pokemon Go when it was inside Google. and then we spun it out, and they're one of our biggest customers of Google Cloud. Thanks to all of you guys walking around with your Pokemon Go's. So I'm gonna pause here and take a pretty hard turn to acquisitions, right? So that's all I was gonna say about investments. Let's go through a brief history of M&A. What do? We're incredibly active. It's kind of funny that sometimes I go to M&A conferences and everybody talks about, oh, last year was a great year, we did like 4 deals. And then we're like, okay, that's a month for us, right? So we've done hundreds of deals, maybe closing on 300 deals. Through these deals, we acquire hundreds of employees, maybe thousands now. Well, thousands of employees, not hundreds. And we spend billions of dollars. Again, big acquisitions suck all the limelight. When we bought Motorola, we paid $11 billion. Waze, $1.1 billion. Nest, $3.8 billion. So we spend billions of dollars. At the same time, we acquired a lot of smaller companies too, primarily for technology and talent. It's, I've said this many times throughout this week to different groups of people. M&A is in our DNA. If you take many of our products with billions of active users, you take Google Maps, you take Android, you take YouTube, they're all acquisitions. So we don't feel like we have to create everything inside. When we enter a new market, when we change our thinking on where we are going, we're very open to doing an acquisition. A big one, a small one, it doesn't matter. I've listed several of them there. Hopefully, most of you know at least one, if not a few. How many of you use Google Analytics? Probably half of you. That's the acquisition Urchin on the bottom, right? So that's a company that we bought way back, maybe 2005, 2006, and that's Google Analytics. As I said, Keyhole was another one that I left, which is our Google Maps. So let's go to, the purpose of this slide is not to go through, it's just to say, it's not even our slide. I plucked this slide from an online magazine called The Verge that they did a while ago. But I think it makes the point, it's not current, it goes back like 3 years ago. It stops at 3 years ago or so. It makes the point that we acquire companies in all areas. And it also makes the point that when we enter new areas, you guys probably remember the Groupon, the daily deal activity a few years ago, right? And you can look at the yellow on the bottom, geo-commerce. We've done a bunch of deals. So when we enter a new area, we're very open to acquiring companies and trying things out. For us, the opportunity cost of not doing is much higher than doing a bad deal or doing a bad investment prematurely. So we're very acquisitive. We do deals across all of Alphabet. Probably there is not an area that we don't do deals. I mean, you may think that, well, why do you guys do deals on search? We still do deals on search. The product area for us is knowledge. We do deals on ads, which is our bread and butter. We not only do we deals in our core product area, we also do deals in immediate adjacencies. Like, and I've listed a few there. YouTube was an adjacency because we had a product called Google Videos. We still went ahead and bought YouTube. It's quite possible that we had better technology. But that deal wasn't about technology. It was about user engagement and number of users, adoption. So we did that, and we parallelly ran Google Video and YouTube for a couple of years, right? And then we entered into new areas. When we bought Android, mobile operating system was a new thing for us. Nest, Internet of Things, is a new thing for us. Nest went and acquired Dropcam. So we enter into new areas, and then we go for moonshots. I almost contemplated taking Skybox imaging off that slide. That's one of my very early deals. We sold the company the Friday before I came here, which was last Monday. So, but that still was an acquisition. Skybox launches satellites to take a little bit coarser imagery than what you see in Google Maps, right? Again, DeepMind. DeepMind is an acquisition. We have our own artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning areas called Google Brain. And we still went ahead and did it because their mission was different. DeepMind's mission is to solve intelligence. Not as in intelligence as defined by the IBMs and the like, which is, oh, I'm going to develop an algorithm that plays great chess, or I'm going to develop an algorithm that goes plays Jeopardy. DeepMind wants to have the same algorithm that can do both. That's how intelligence works. It's general intelligence. So that's what they wanted to do. So we went and acquired them. We left them alone. I'll talk about integration at length during the life of a deal. But all this, there is no cookie cutter approach. A couple of you asked me during this past 2 weeks, how do you think about integration? Integration starts from strategy, and then I'll talk about that. So they're all integrated differently. Just to give you a couple of points, Nest is completely left alone. Right? They do their thing. We provide them what we can, the computing power and other, the Google goodness that we can give. And other companies like, I don't know, AdMeld, AdMob, Songza, they're all fully integrated into Google. So we'll talk about integration in a bit. We do deals across the globe. Most of them tend to be in America. We've done a bunch of deals in Europe. I've also listed a few on the bottom right that are US-based, but with significant operations in Europe. I did the same event about 4 or 5 months ago in Europe. That's why you see Spain on the top, Virus Total and Panorama. In Brazil, our history of M&A here goes back to July of 2005, but it stopped there. So we haven't acquired a company since. Aquan, I was at the site last week. That became the Google's R&D center. That place precedes the São Paulo campus. They had 15 employees at the time. Now they have 100 plus engineers. In November 2005, we've expanded in São Paulo. So let's talk about, that's a brief history. Now let's talk about why we do acquisitions and what do we acquire, really. No. Again, this is where I want to separate intent versus the structure of a deal. We acquire companies for several reasons, right? The most simple ones are expertise. So we know that people have certain talent. Bebop, one of the more recent ones. For the Googlers here, that's Diane Green's company, who is the senior VP of enterprise now. And when we want to enter into a new business, we bought Motorola, we bought Nest, so we do it for, those are the bookends, but majority of our deals tend to be in the middle, where we want to acquire technology. Right? With Skybox, we wanted to acquire satellite technology, DeepMind AI, or we want to do for roadmap acceleration. So we may have a product already, but we think if we acquire something else, it'll be much faster. Songza, same thing. It's a music subscription company that we acquired. We have our own music subscription too, but we thought we could accelerate the roadmap with that acquisition. Right? So we do, the point here is that we do deals for several reasons. But what do we really acquire? So if I go back to the prior slide, we may just want the expertise. Right? So there is a company out there that developed a great application that has a lot of user adoption, but we don't care about either of those. We don't care about the product. We don't care about the technology. We do care that the people were so good that they could develop that kind of technology. In that case, we just need the people. We want to hire them, and then we want them to work on our products. Right? But the deal structure may be different. The deal structure may be that maybe we don't want a lawsuit 3 years from now that somebody developed a technology in a prior company, so we may acquire the whole company, but the intent still is just the talent. Even if we get their product and technology, we shelve it somewhere. We probably won't even put it on the Google internal network, but we play it safe. We're generally pretty conservative, right? Or we can buy just an asset, right? There was only a couple of deals where we acquired real estate and machinery for robotics purposes. We acquire companies for patent portfolio, in which case we'll just take the patents. We'll use them to develop our technology. We won't take any people. They'll go develop something else. In terms of structure, the volume of the deals tend to be tech plus talent, right? Because we acquire the technology to be conservative. And most of the times we don't buy commercialized IP. We actually commercialize that. We get IP and commercialize. On the last one, the whole thing, right? This is the Motorola. This is the Nest. Those are big companies that we acquire. That's YouTube. So we're far from perfect. We still make a lot of mistakes. But we seem to have found some success in M&A. We continue to do it. And we learn every single day. This morning I had a discussion with a gentleman about he was a victim of an acquisition. And he was asking, how do we do deals and how do we avoid making mistakes? There is no foolproof way. Sometimes the deal happens over a weekend because of competitive pressure. You can't plan enough. You don't do enough diligence. You just acquire them because it's a competitive situation. You need the company. And that kind of pace is stomach churning for the employees that are involved. We're very sympathetic. We've learned a lot. We have frameworks that I'll share with you on how we look at integration and how we look at various things. But we feel reasonably successful in M&A. M&A is a top driver, one of the key drivers for our top talent. Not all of these people started in the positions that they're in. And there are also times that we don't acquire the leadership because the leadership may not be fitting for the Google culture, fitting for the Google environment. So we may not get the talent all the time. And I mean, some of these people, like Paul Muret, you see there, is the CTO of Archin. When we acquired them, it's a 20-person company. I think he manages about over 1,000 people now, still managing analytics. Noam Bardin was the CEO of Waze. That company grew, leaps and bounds since we acquired them 4 years ago. Demis Hassabis, for those of you that are in the areas of machine intelligence, he was the CEO of DeepMind. John, he goes by JG, not JZ, but JG. He manages a large 3,000 people artificial intelligence, machine learning, knowledge team under Google. So they're all highly accomplished. Berthia on the top left you see is the CEO of Aquan, we acquired in Bello. He's the site director now, Eng site director. His team multiplied by 8 times or so. So M&A is a top driver of talent. And in the round table that I hosted with these two gentlemen here, somebody was asking, what are the top 2 things that you guys acquired? We were always focused on technology and people. Okay? This is why we think our deals have been successful, and we could be maybe overestimating. But when we acquire companies, whether it's YouTube or whether it's whatnot, we think we're good at scale, right? For an entrepreneur to scale from a 10 million user property to 100 million users or a 200 million or a half a billion users, I think that's where we can come in and really jumpstart the whole thing by putting a lot of computing resources behind, infrastructure behind, the Google brand name behind. So we're good at scale. We're very data-driven. One of our mantras has been that we don't just scale the number of people with our business. We leverage technology. We find technology solutions for automation instead of throwing more bodies at it. We have enormous patience, and we've exhibited time and again, and a willingness to contribute billions of dollars of capital to these things. YouTube probably hasn't turned a dime, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years. It probably took just as many years to become profitable. But we have patience. When we acquired these, there are many deals that I know that I worked on that we said, we want you to kill all the revenue before we acquire you, because that's not the reason we are acquiring. We want you to integrate into something larger. So we're not short-term focused. We don't say okay, we acquired them, they have to make money. And don't get me wrong, there are some deals we do that. Nest is a full-on business acquisition. We want them to grow. We want them to get revenue. But it's not true for all the deals, right? Archin, to this date, they don't make any money, right? Google Analytics is a free product, if I remember correctly. For us, leaders matter. We take a deep look at, during the diligence, we probably spent 8 hours, maybe a lot more. Eduardo and Jens can talk about that. They both are acquired into Google. We spend enormous amount of time assessing culture, looking at each and every employee, looking at the hiring practices, looking at the promotion practices. All that informs us the culture and the kind of leadership and the kind of people that they hire. So we spend a lot of time. So it could be very frustrating for the companies, but just like we spend a lot of time in our recruiting, you all probably heard stories about Google recruiting. We spend a lot of time on diligence. We focus on the user. I've heard Matt and Ryan talk about in their presentations, focus on the user. We believe that it worked for us. We continue to do that. Finally, we have executives that understand M&A, and we integrate well. They're active. When the sponsor is not active, we call them sponsor, as in like somebody has to sponsor a deal that I'm working on. When the executives don't have the time to nurture an acquisition and let them grow in the company, acquisitions fail. We've learned that from a few acquisitions. So our executives now understand that it's important to nurture these and let them grow in the company. So we do all these things, and we believe that these are some of the reasons why we've been successful. Somebody asked me when I presented this before at Seed, would you call Seed an incubator, Andre, or is it an accelerator? Or it's an accelerator in Bello. We were there doing the same presentation. I said, well, I was waiting for your slide on why your deals suck. Still don't have that slide, but I mean, I can, maybe in Q&A, if some of you are interested, I can answer those, why we think our deals fail. So let's go one more step down. Let's talk about what happens in the life of a deal. There are a lot of words on this slide, so the purpose of these is not to touch every word, but to give you a view on what happens from when we show interest, which is kind of, a phone call to get a date, to kind of the wedding, right? So what happens throughout this phase? So we don't actively, well, we haven't historically actively sourced deals because we're in the middle of Silicon Valley. Our executives are very well connected. Google has been known to be a pretty good acquirer over the years. So deals somehow find their way to us. I mean, we generate a lot of inbound interest from VC firms, from private equity firms, from other entrepreneurs in the Bay Area. But recently, we've been a little bit more structured, so we have a small group that sources deals. Once we find a deal, once we express interest, we sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Then we conduct some initial diligence. We ask them a few questions on, hey, give us the last 2 years of tax returns, or give us your cap table, give us your products, and a little bit of understanding of technology, so on and so forth. That we need to put together what we call a deal review deck inside that we need to get approval for, right? So once we get the exec approval on those deals, and that's usually bound by a certain price, so then now we're able to communicate with the target. And then we sign a letter of intent, right? So I'm on the second column now. The letter of intent is non-binding, but we rarely walk away from a letter of intent. So for us, we treat it's like binding. So we don't sign a letter of intent unless we feel very confident that we're going to have a deal. In all my tenure, I probably know 2 deals that we walked away from an LOI because something really terrible came out in diligence or something like that. So we usually don't walk away. As soon as the letter of intent is signed, at times, depending on the target, the term sheet is signed, the diligence process starts. This is not like the previous diligence and asking us a few questions. Now we're talking about minutia. We're talking about, let's look at your trademark filings. Let's look at your open source. Your open source, are you disclosing properly like all the licenses? Let's look at all the employees you fired over the last 10 years and why. Because we need to know, because they may, now that Google is acquiring them, they may come and sue us for some past compensation. So I mean, I can talk about that. I mean, the initial questionnaire we send would probably be like 300 lines. Half of them may be not applicable for most acquisitions, but it's a pretty elaborate process. The size we are, with the cash we have in bank, we can't afford to be sued left and right all the time, so we have to do our homework, and we do it. Again, time permitting. There are situations where you are stuck in a highly competitive situation, and there are 4 big companies in Bay Area talking to them. Then we may not have the opportunity or the leverage to do it, but usually we do. Okay? So parallelly, while the diligence is happening, we're planning for integration. Okay, how should we look at this? I'll talk about integration in a bit more depth, but should we leave them alone? Should we do a partial integration? Should we not do anything? Things like that. So all those things happen parallelly. From term sheet to close, diligence and integration planning happens parallelly, and the lawyers are going to talk about the legal documents that they have to sign. That happens parallelly. People ask me in prior meetings, how long does the process take? I mean, the easiest answer is it depends. But for most cases, if it's in US, if the company is fully buttoned up in terms of they have a clean, stockholder table, their technology is all properly, licensed and so on and so forth, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 months. International deals tend to take a little bit longer. Some deals, I've known them taken 14, 15 months. So it varies, but a good estimate would be US deals 2 to 3 months and international deals 3 to 4 months. Because the labor diligence is different when you acquire a company in Germany versus India versus China. That means there are more lawyers involved, right? And during this process, whether we acquire a 2-person company or a 300-person company, usually on our side, the Google side, we probably have 20 people doing all these various work streams, right? Now, you have trademark lawyers, IP lawyers, you have human resource experts, you have corporate engineering staff that looks at IT diligence, security vulnerabilities, your data privacy. So it's just, unless you kind of keep all these things in a very structured fashion, it's hard to manage that process. But we have the tools. Okay? So now we signed the deal. And everybody is happy, champagne bottles, dinners, gifts, all that is happening. Right? So what happens after that? The first day when we acquired them, we onboard employees. They become Google employees, they sign the new employee agreement, so on and so forth, and the integration starts. At a certain period, if it's, let's say, a 5-person talent deal, we usually onboard them, we make the right introductions, we get them the right training. Corp dev usually walks away from them in a month, and then we check with them every 3 months or so for a year, and then that's it. There isn't a whole lot happening, right? When you acquire a Nest, right, the initial phase is pretty limited because we're not integrating them. We're leaving them alone. But there is a lot you can do from an integration standpoint. Then the motto becomes not integration, it's business acceleration. How can we accelerate Nest's business more so than if they were by themselves? Right? Now it comes, okay, Nest wants to go to 15 different countries, but they have no presence. But we have. Their manuals need to be translated into local languages. Okay? So we can get people to do that. Or they need to be placed on Google Play Store to get a higher hit rate. Yeah, we can do that. So we accelerate their business and we throw more money. We give them 100 recruiters to go hire another 300 people in a quarter. So we can do all those things, but let them make all the product decisions, technology decisions, customer decisions, marketing, so on and so forth, but provide the Google services to them. Okay. Monitoring is where we don't do it with all the deals because it just becomes hard. Usually $50 million and above deals, we monitor them for a couple of years. Why did we do the deal? What was the strategic intent? What are the OKRs? For those of you who still haven't heard that word, objectives and key results, which are like our Google lingo. Are they hitting those? When I say monitor, it almost sounds like a bad word, like, oh, I'm going to monitor if you're doing it or not. And the purpose of our monitoring is not that. The purpose of monitoring is that, okay, Nest, you thought you were going to sell 4 million thermostats. You only sold 3 million. So what can we do to help you to hit those goals? It's more a very nurturing, supporting kind of intent as opposed to, oh, you didn't do it, so I'm going to cut your bonus. It's not that, because we don't tie those usually to these deals anyway. So that's the broader process. As I've alluded several times, it does take a village to do a deal. And there are many different people involved. The corp dev team by itself is probably about 35 people, people like me. And then we have these adjacent M&A areas that probably has another 200 people that work on M&A. And we have a sponsor organization who is like, approved the deal and putting the money behind the deal. And then we have day-to-day managers on that. For a deal to be successful, it does take a village. So how do we think about integration? Integration for us is an end result of other things. We don't think of integration without understanding why are we acquiring this company, and what are the goals. And then that informs integration, right? And what are the various approaches? So it could be a full-on integration. A full-on integration would look something like this. So you have a 15-person company, you have 4 software engineers, 2 product managers, maybe a couple of customer service reps, a finance guy, an HR guy, so on and so forth, right? So we take them, we functionalize them into Google. Okay, the software engineers will report to a software engineering manager. The PM will report to a PM group manager or whatever. So we kind of split them, tuck them into various different areas. Usually, entrepreneurs don't like this, right? Because in a single day, you're losing all your leverage, and you're used to this, and this is something that you build. It's almost like you're tearing them apart and putting them in. But we're incredibly transparent. We talk about these things before we do a term sheet or before we do a definitive agreement. We say that this is how we are thinking about it. And some deals don't happen because they don't want to lose the control. Those are very rare. But it's hard to lose control. It's not meant to be you're a control freak. It's just meant to be when you lose control, your ability to deliver a product goes down. Right? Before you just walk to the other desk and say that I want this and this, now you're like, you got to go to talk to some other manager, and they have to tell their employee, and then they have to put it on their OKRs. But sometimes it's necessary, right? And then, we do phased integrations, right? So that means we don't do the whole thing in one day. We just say that the easiest things to take away are payroll, supplier sourcing, HR support, legal support. So we say that, okay, we're going to take all those away, but we'll keep the key part of the product and technology teams intact, right? So they'll operate for a while. Those are usually full and the partial integration. The phased integration is where we say that we don't know what to do with this deal. We know why we acquired them, but we haven't really formed a clear hypothesis on how we want to integrate. We may have an initial hypothesis that we don't feel so confident about. So let's take a year. Let them run as it is. Let's offer them as we can, the Google goodness. But let's punt the decision for a year, right? That's what we did with one of our recent acquisitions, a company called WebPass that does wireless ISP. So they're a wireless ISP in San Francisco, San Diego, and Boston. Now they're going into Chicago, Denver, and Seattle. So that's another company. And by the way, that company used to use Eduardo's radios before we acquired them. Eduardo used to build wireless radios. So, and then sometimes we get into new areas, right? We just, like I've already talked about that. And so those we leave them alone because we don't know how to manage them. There was some deliberation about should we make Nest part of our already existing hardware initiatives, because we had some hardware initiatives, but then we decided not to. Then some companies, we completely leave them alone. In case of Motorola, hindsight, but leaving them alone made it easy to sell them, right? In case of Skybox, the partial integration model that you're seeing, it became incredibly hard to separate them when we sold them 2 weeks ago, because that was fully integrated. When a Skybox satellite goes and takes an imagery, that's going into Google Maps right away, right? So now how do you the phrase is unscramble the eggs. It's very hard. We got lucked out with Motorola. When we sold Motorola to Lenovo, it was pretty easy. So those are various ways we think of integration. There is no cookie cutter. We don't have preconceived notions on what to do. It's all based on what's the strategy for this acquisition, what are we trying to achieve, and then based on that we integrate. So a few things about being acquired. Now, previously I said, what do we do? Now I'm trying to offer something on your side. From our angle, team is your greatest asset. So know your team, be able to talk about that in diligence, be able to present them in the right light, help us help the other side assess the acquisition, right? Diligence, so trying to understand, there were a few companies that I talked about that are discussing exits, and the usual first question that I ask is, even in a pitch deck that I've just had a discussion before this meeting, even in a pitch deck, you have to be able to articulate what do you think the acquirer should do with your acquisition. You can start shaping their thinking right from then, and then understand what they're trying to solve, and be ready for a distraction. Deals are incredibly distracting. The initial euphoria has a very short shelf life. Everybody is happy when you do a deal. After 48 hours, you're like, I'm in a new company, and I have a new manager. I don't know whom to contact for this. I need to sign an NDA, but before I would walk to the lawyer who is sitting next to me and then have the NDA signed. Now at Google, you create your own NDA. There is a link, you go create it. That's the easy part. But when you try to customize that, well, previously it's just like, you strike and write something and somebody else types it and you got it. Google doesn't, because we can't have 100 NDAs. We're going to have 2 or 3. And the other, it just becomes, negotiations become harder. The entrepreneurs feel like we're slowing them down. Yes, we are. And there's no other way for things like that, right? The investors, right? Sometimes you may think you have a deal. The investors may not agree that it's a good deal. The investors can stop the deal. So have an open conversation with them, understand their expectations. There's only one deal that I saw that it's almost a done deal and the investors wanted to back out. Very rarely does it happen. Usually most entrepreneurs are pretty good in communicating with them, but communicate the nuances. Future, think about your future with them and discuss it during the diligence phase. Otherwise, you're in for a rocky marriage. Right? Culture, we value culture. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, do you think this so-called culture at Google would be there for another 10 years? I would have said absolutely not. We're hiring like 10,000 people every year. How do you preserve culture? But to my surprise, every single day, it seems like the core tenets of our culture are still intact. So we value culture. Believe your own slogans, live them, articulate them. There may be a huge culture mismatch that you may not want to come to Google. Think about all these things. So with that, I think I've covered all the content that I have, and ready for questions. Oh. I don't think the mic is on.
Hey, okay.
Yeah,
Seshu, thank you so much for coming, for all you shared. I must confess, it is overwhelming. It's a lot. When you try to think about everything that is behind, it is really overwhelming. But you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
I must say it is a bit shame for us. It has been 12 years since the last acquisition, which was the first, I guess, was to open the territory for Google here in Brazil. Do you think there's something related to the legal framework? Because Brazilian legal framework is not friendly for business and especially for IP. How do you think about these topics?
The legal framework may give us a pause to not go into a region and acquire the company, but there are always ways around that. I don't think India has a great legal framework. Well, we never acquired a company in India, so that's not a good example. Some of the European countries have very stringent labor laws and very stringent regulations. They may not be conducive. We still do it, so I wouldn't use that as the reason why we're not here. But I would pose the question, I don't know the answer, that legal framework may be stifling innovation. We don't look for copycats. We don't look for Me Too kind of things. We look for technology and talent. So maybe what I'm thinking is maybe that stifles the innovation. And when we see one, we acquire companies. And we don't think in terms of, or do I want to acquire in this country or in this area? We're very opportunistic. All our acquisitions are opportunistic. So we don't have a goal chart on we're going to do 5 acquisitions in Europe and 2 here, or 3 in Android and 4 in YouTube. We don't have that. We're very opportunistic. When we see something we like, we go hard at it and we try to buy them.
Nice. Just to add on that, I saw you mention several deals that were made with US-based companies with operation in other countries. So we are using this strategy in some projects that we have. So we believe that this will give a fast track for this company to have a US presence based in the US, and even if they have operations in other countries. So do you think that will give a fast track to cut a deal with Google?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is yes, right? Because once you have a corporation in US, I mean, there is a certain framework that you have to operate under, which we are comfortable, which we understand, which reduces the risk for us. So I think so. I don't have a deeper analysis behind that other than a superficial answer. Good job. Bad throw, but good catch. Yeah.
All right, I have this huge curiosity that I never got a straight answer to. Do you know why Google acquired Waze?
Do I know why Google acquired? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that satisfies, because the straight answer is that we don't have user-generated content in Google Maps. Could we do it at that time? Could we do it? We probably could do it. It could probably take a year. It could probably take 6 months. If there is a cult, so this is my answer. This is not Google's answer, by the way. So why do you need user content, and where does it really help, right? So let's say there is no traffic in a city, right? You probably don't need Waze, right? And you probably don't have enough people sending the signals for optimizing your route. So it's a very suburban play, right? Again, it's individual preferences, but the Google Maps interface may be preferable for some people, and Waze interface may be. We thought Waze has a pretty much like cult following in these big cities, and it's user-generated content. We like their algorithms. Even to this date, again, I'm not a technical guy, I don't think that we've integrated their algorithms into Google Maps or vice versa, but we did integrate all their back-end signals, like the traffic signals, into Google Maps. So now you see in things in Google Maps, right? It could also be a defensive play, right? It could also be that, it can go to somebody else. But again, we spent $1.1 billion. I don't think we'd pay $1.1 billion insurance premium to acquire Waze, as much money as we have in the bank. But so I don't know if that satisfies you. If your satisfaction increased by 5% from yesterday, I'll have succeeded.
Oh, you're successful.
Okay, so you showed a slide, and there is these 4 pillars of acquiring a company.
Yeah.
You mentioned identifying, committing, and then managing and monitoring. About managing, you said the onboarding and the handoff processes. Could you be more specific about that? Could you give us an example about?
Yeah. So let's talk an easiest acquisition, and then maybe a very complicated acquisition where handoff becomes difficult. So our handoffs could range anywhere from a month from the date of onboarding. We may hand off a deal. So when we say handoff, it's handing off to the people who wanted to acquire that in the first place, like a product management director or a VP of engineering or whoever is using that technology, right? It's that handoff, internal handoff that I'm talking about from corp dev to business. A simple deal we probably could do in a month, right? Hey, everybody is integrated, they're happy with their new pace, and they know how to get benefits, and they know how to get a massage and get their food, right? So we got nothing else to add. There's no point me lingering around as if I'm doing something for them. So we go tell the sponsor that, hey, we're done. We're going to meet with them like every 3 months. We'll probably survey them in 6 months to see how they're feeling in the company. But beyond that, there's really nothing we can add, right? Then take a deal like, well, the deal that I worked probably the most on, Skybox. We don't have any satellites prior to acquiring Skybox. We don't have a good business model, but we thought that what they're doing was pretty cool. A 4-student team from Stanford, from a graduate research program, a graduate education program, could pitch a business case to take satellite imagery pretty cheap. I mean, probably NASA spends, I don't know, $500 million a satellite. These guys will launch at like $6 million a pop, right? And then they can take pictures and they can take, if you give them enough satellites, they can take a picture of your driveway every day, right? So we were intrigued and we were really interested. What's the drawback? They don't have the resolution that we need to put them in Google Maps. The resolution is not the same in Google Maps anyway. I mean, highly populated, dense areas will have higher resolution than like, out in the boons. I mean, it won't have as much. And then we have multiple streams of imagery that is at the disposal of the Google Maps to pick and choose, right? So what could those be? Recentness. Well, maybe this satellite imagery was taken yesterday, but the other one was taken 6 months ago. That one has a different resolution than this one. This one is more accurate from a GPS coordinate standpoint than this one. So the algorithm goes through multiple things to pick the best imagery that's possible, right? So we have all of that. Now, what do we do with this imagery? So we don't know. A deal like that, we don't have an area where to even put them in. We don't have a satellite team to tuck them in. So in a deal like that, I've stayed on it for 2 years after we acquired them. I was going to hand off, and then we were like, okay, we're not doing satellites anymore, so I had to stand on the deal for another 9 months to sell it. But so what do we do in those deals? We help them make connections, right? Okay, and we help them make connections, and then there are 9 other people like me. Based on our individual capabilities, we don't all have the same resume. My background is I have a master's in mechanical engineering, 13 years in finance. So on and so forth. We try to add value based on our background. So we say, okay, we don't have a product, so let's think about products. Let's involve a strategic arm of Google. Let's brainstorm. Then we figured out change detection could be pretty powerful, right? So let's say I'm taking a picture of the Dubai port every day, and I'm seeing, yesterday I had 14 oil containers, today I had 8. Is that information useful to anybody? Probably. Foxconn has 200 cars driving in and driving out every day last month, but now it's like 600 cars. Is that information useful? Probably useful. So then we kind of, that's where we show enormous patience to figure out, okay, change control may be pretty powerful, so then what do we do with that? Who's going to count all these cars manually? Oh, we have a huge operation in India that's trying to take autonomous driving car images and marking whether they're seeing a donkey or a dog. Those guys can probably count cars too. Maybe we can use the same platform. So now let's take 4 guys to India. Let's get that functionality. So there's a lot you can do, or you can say that it's not my job and you can walk away. So we all do different things. I've stayed on it for 2 years. So the handoff didn't happen till 2 years later. Answers your question? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You can throw it to me.
Wow. What are the terms usually? Is it cash? Is it equity? A mix?
Usually cash. Yeah. It's a mix. It comes to negotiation and all that. that also sends a pretty strong signal that we value our stock. Right.
A follow-up on the international thing. My company is half Brazilian, half Spanish right now. Is one or the other viewed better in Google's eyes? 'Cause we have to decide if we want to be one or the other right now.
Honestly, I don't know the answer. We need to talk to our legal guys or finance guys or somebody. So I'm generally a mile wide and an inch deep. I think you scratched more than an inch on that question.
Can you discuss a little bit about strategic rationale for divestitures? Haven't talked as much as the divestiture side, and also different type of question. As you grow bigger, is antitrust playing a part in your decision making?
Your last part, as we grow bigger,
Is antitrust?
Antitrust. Yeah. Let's take the first one. So the first one was one more time.
Is divestitures?
Divestitures.
What drives you to divest the business?
Yeah, price is usually, it's an issue, but it's not the only issue because when we do, this is going to sound like well, let me put it on the table. I'm a Google Kool-Aid drinker. I've been there for 10 years. This is the best company that I've ever worked for. So take what I say with a grain of salt because when we do divestitures, whether it's Niantic, whether it's Skybox, we put people first. Right? We've acquired them. These guys have a mission. We need to find them a home. We don't want it on our conscience that we brought a company and killed it. Right? So the easiest thing to do in some of these divestitures that are smaller ones are just walk away. Just say, program canceled. Have we done that? Yes, we have. There's some, if you don't have anything to offer, there's nothing to sell. You buy a company, and then you put resources, hundreds of millions, and then there is no product to show for in the end, and we have to make a decision. Should we put more in that or not? Then those we kill. There's no other way to do them. Then there are companies, whether it's Niantic, whether it's Skybox, they've done incredibly well. They've done everything that we asked and more. But high-tech doesn't stand still. The industry keeps changing, and the business needs keep changing, and capital allocation changes, right? Let's talk again, Skybox, because I've been using that example quite a bit. So it takes every year more than double-digit millions of dollars to develop new satellites and launch them and buy like millions of dollars worth of cameras that can take pictures from satellite, right? So if you worked on that model for a couple of years, and if you haven't cracked the nut on how can I monetize change detection, well, when you feel like you have invested, when the priorities of the business changes, when capital becomes restricted, you have to make a decision. The easiest thing to do is, again, okay, sunk cost, I'm going to walk away. No, we said these guys asked for everything that we did, everything we asked and more, so let's find them a great home. I mean, we took a year to find a home where they can continue their business and thrive. And the deal financials are not, not published, so I can't talk about them. But we didn't look for a financial return. That was not even in the top 3 considerations. The second question, sorry, I should write them down.
Okay, it's about as you grow bigger.
As you grow bigger,
as
antitrust.
you grow bigger, the antitrust.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a concern for big companies, and we have antitrust lawyers that keep us in check, and so I don't know if that was a consideration in a big deal. If that was the case, we wouldn't do the deal in the first place. We're pretty conservative. The 2 deals that probably touched on that is probably ITA, the software company that we bought that has airline prices, and Motorola, but maybe not. I mean, there are so many phone manufacturers that it's probably not an antitrust concern. I can't think of one where that was a concern.
Yeah.
I'll get it.
What do you think are the biggest difference between the Google M&A strategy and the strategy of other big tech companies like Apple, Salesforce, Amazon?
Yeah, there is huge information asymmetry there. I know a lot about Google. I know little about other companies, but that doesn't still stop me from answering it. So allow me to make a fool of myself. I think Google probably feels more like, as I've said earlier, the opportunity cost of not investing is pretty high. So we tend to be a lot more acquisitive, even if you just look at the number of deals that we do. Apple and Amazon, they tend to be more formulaic. This is exactly what we need to do. And I have a product roadmap. These are 3 holes that I have. I had to plug them. I'm going to go very targeted, look for acquisitions in that space, and we do it. We don't think that way. I mean, we should, but we were so active acquiring companies that we're not that strategic. We have a strategy team within my team now that's thinking along those lines. Other companies like, Apple generally has tough time attracting companies because the other, especially Facebook and Google, are usually favorite destination for entrepreneurs because they feel like they could thrive in that environment. They'll be provided resource. We have higher tolerance to risk, but other companies not less so. So we don't compete head to head that much with other companies. So my guess is that they probably follow more, the Amazon route of being more disciplined. Doesn't mean to say that we lack discipline. We're just more entrepreneurial. That gentleman, I can throw it too. So. I appreciate you trusting my throw more than yours. Yeah.
Hi. First of all, thanks for coming and sharing your experience with us. The question is, we have developed a technology here in Brazil. We were granted a patent in the United States, and we don't know how to show this to Google. Where is the entry point? Whom should we call? Whom should we mail? Or only after we go to the market and be bigger?
No, I mean, so there is, you can send it to me if you have a pitch deck. I'll put it in the right hands. Because of the amount of inbound interest we generate, our turnaround time is not that quick, for one. 2, we have my counterparts who negotiate the deals, because I don't negotiate the deals, I do diligence and integration. My counterparts on a deal that negotiate the deals all have product areas assigned to them. So what they do is they have a pipeline. So they take all these companies, they take a look at them, they take them to the sponsor, like the VP of whatever that product area is, and then they have a discussion. And it's a triage, right? Oh, these 4 look like interesting, so now I need to have some product managers or software engineers look at it based on your value. And then they'll follow up with you. So it's not, you can send it to me. Yeah. That gentleman right there, yeah.
Hi, great to have you here, and great talk. Could you share with us for the next 3 years the Google priorities, or what could be shared in terms of what are your key priorities in acquisition for the next 3 years? And another question, what do you think that this environment, Brazil, what we could do to grow more business that could be acquired by companies like Google? Do you think that we have funds and we have angel and seed investors which are very focused on traction and sales, and that's not exactly what probably Google is looking for? So what would be the recipe?
Yeah. Let me take the first one. Obviously, M&A is a pretty sensitive topic to talk openly. So I won't talk about M&A deals because even to say anything, I don't know anything to say. Because we don't look at it as like, we're very opportunistic in our deals. So there's no master plan, and these are the 10 companies we're going after. Generally, the areas that we feel like, that are really at the cusp of growth and investment inside are cloud, we feel like we probably have far superior product than anybody in the market, but we just don't feel like we have enough customers. And that takes investment, that takes, and there are other people that are here from my team, from our team, that have a lot more knowledge on cloud than me, but internally that's what I hear. The second area is hardware. The hardware, you probably saw, like we've launched our phones, Pixel, Pixel XL. I think that's another area that we'll probably invest aggressively. And the third area, which is, I can talk as a product like a Google Home that leverages machine intelligence and that kind of stuff, or generally, as a company, we're making a turn into, we always have these slogans in the company to rally the whole company. A couple of years ago, it was mobile first. Everything, it has to be mobile first, and there were some great talks given by people here. I think the new mantra for the company is AI first, artificial intelligence. So I'll see a lot more acquisitions in there. The broad area for that, for us, is knowledge. We call under knowledge, you will have search, you will have artificial intelligence, you have Google News, you have Home, and all these products. The guts of Home, not the piece of hardware. So those are probably our investment areas. So your next question about what should we do here, that's a pretty tough dilemma. I mean, I've engaged deeply with at least 9, if not 10 entrepreneurs here in terms of discussing their growth plans, international expansion, should we, growth plans not just as in revenue growth, it's also like people growth. Where should I invest? Should I hire 2 more sales guys to generate more revenue that my VC is asking? Which may not be what you're looking for if you want to be acquired by like the Facebooks and the Googles and the Twitters. That's a tough question to answer. I think you have to feel it out yourself. Because what we look for, it's not that we have any allergies to money, but we value technology and people. So if you have the technology sophistication that Google would be interested in, that makes you interesting. But if you take another technology, if you try to say like I'm doing something, machine learning to work on some small market here, I'm going to go to a different country and grow there, I'm going to go to a different country and grow there, that's incredibly operational. Usually we don't invest in companies like that. It doesn't mean that we never will. It's just that that's not what I see Google acquiring. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know the answer. You got to, what I would subtly caution people to do is, you don't need to develop everything here. I mean, I've seen a lot of companies saying, I do machine learning right now. I'm like, are you developing something that already exists, or are you developing something new? I mean, some of my colleagues gave talks on Google's machine learning, the TensorFlows and all those. Do you want to leverage a technology that exists to solve a problem, or are you developing technology for the sake of developing technology? If you're doing the latter, developing technology for the sake of developing technology, you have to assess, do I have the talent here? Not 1 or 2 people, I mean, that exists everywhere. And also, I mean, if you talk about artificial intelligence, I can only count maybe 5 areas where there is talent where you can go hire in 10, 15 people. University of Alberta, like Edmonton, or Toronto, New York, London, Bay Area. I don't know of any other areas where the schools are generating hundreds of PhDs that are pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence. So are you in the right place to develop the technology? So it's not an easy task. It's very, it has to be very introspective and soul-searching how you want to take your company forward. So. Excellent.
That's it?
Yep.
So wrap up.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to wrap up. I didn't even pay attention to. So Felipe on YouTube, I think. Hello, I have a startup which is going to merge with another startup before we go to the market. We have complementary skills. What would your recommendations I should take care of in this merger? How do we evaluate the shareholders? How good is it for both sides? That's that's a pretty deep question, Felipe. I'll probably have to repeat some of the things that I've already said, right? Mergers are always, there is some saying that there is really no merger. I mean, there's always somebody has a leverage, There is a classic book written on the Daimler-Chrysler merger I think the book is, I forgot what it is. It's something to do with equals. You should read that. So in that, it comes down to understanding why you are trying to merge with the other company. What is that complementary skill set? What do you offer? Have you guys figured out how to work together? Do you have a combined roadmap on where you are going? This is all pre-signing, right? And what are the goals for that? And who is responsible for what? Unless you figure those out, it's very difficult. So it's very hard for me to make recommendations without knowing that. And how do we evaluate shareholders? How good is it for both sides? Well, I mean, you got to send me your cap table and how much you're getting paid. So it's very hard for me to, is it good for both sides? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you all for putting up with the last hour and 15 minutes or so. I've really enjoyed the questions. I've really enjoyed my 2 weeks here. Look forward to coming back, Andre. Now it's in your hands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So with this, we are wrapping up the open sessions at the Expert Summit. So I would invite you all to give not me, but the experts a big applause. They are, I think we are pretty tired today. It's been intense, but I'm super proud of the amount of work that you guys put to the benefit of campus and the community over this past 2 weeks. And I can only imagine how hard it will be to have the second edition of Campus Expert Summit with this first edition being so high level. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming to the event. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, bye.